This is the Millionaire Talk Show. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd, Millionaire, founder of the Todd Capital Investment Club, Todd Capital Options Community, all that really cool stuff. And, the purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American business owners and investors. And, man, we have a legend in the building. I don't know if he knows he's a legend, but he's a legend to a lot of people. You guys have seen him on the stage at InvestFest. This brother has over 300 students that have closed on $100 million in real estate. He owns 40 units. And he also has 4 investor funds. I didn't know that. He's an author of Rich and Righteous, and just an overall dope person, man. I've been following him since just like years ago. And every time I hear him talk, you look at life differently. And I don't know if he knows that he has that impact on people, but it's true. Like, you hear him say stuff and he'll be like, man, if you don't own a home, you're homeless. And I'll never forget he said that, and I went and got a home. Like, you need somebody to get in your face like that, and that's what he did. So you guys are in for a treat. We got the brother Jullien Gordon. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
So, man, for the people, can you give them a quick, bio? Because we've done this before. We never did it in person. This is the third time you've been on the show. Mm-hmm. So I don't really want to walk through your story. I want to kind of dig into some other details of other things that are going to help people.
Yeah.
But I want people to know who they're listening to. So you can help the people with that?
Yeah, 100%. So, my first identity, the highest identity of all, is I'm a child of God, period. That's above all. Then from there, I am a proud father of a 7-year-old. And then from there, I'm a real estate investor, a real estate educator, and a real estate developer. So that's where I always start. And that's who I am at my core. And for me, all this work that we're doing is really God's work. You've heard me say it before. What was God's first gift to man before life? It was land, right? And so that's real estate. And so that's really what the mission is to reclaim this land and the assets and improvements that we build upon it, and the people that we take care of, and the homes that are on those properties.
Right. So I read that wrong. He's an investor in 4 funds, and you also have your own fund.
Yes.
How's that going? I know we talked about that when you launched it, doing work in Louisiana.
Yep, in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
Oh, man, we continue to grow and expand. Probably going to raise another one to bring more capital to the community. So that's the Buyback Baton Rouge Fund with Anthony Kimball and Tevin Wade. We have some large developments that are happening out there in the Eddie Robinson Senior Historic District and Scotlandville neighborhood near Southern. And so the work is continuing. For these larger projects, a lot of work is underground before you actually get started and you lay that first brick. And so we're starting to lay bricks now. And so it's really exciting, and really things are going to manifest really quickly, and people are going to see all the work that we've been doing in the background. Yeah,
it looks like it's hard work and it's kind of slow work.
It is.
And sometimes when people get into these funds, they expect it to be boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, you have to manage investors' expectations up front. Like, for me, it's like bamboo. Bamboo grows underground for quite a few years before it then sprouts up and shoots up to 90 feet, And so that's what it looks like when you're investing in a real estate fund. Right. And overall, your return, your IRR, not your ROI, your IRR, your internal.
Break that down for the people.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever heard the term IRR. Very few people.
Internal rate of return. So most people, they say, oh, I'm going to need a 10% ROI on this. So if you put in 100,000, you're expecting 10,000 every single year. But with an IRR, you might not see 10,000 every single year, but over 5 years, you're going to end up with 50,000 as if it was a 10% return every single year. And so that's where you have to manage investors' expectations, because they want to see something grow every single year. But with real estate, you actually have to go buy the land. You have to go actually develop, and then the return comes from the moment that the building is complete and you have built-in equity and the cash-on-cash return, and then for us, the historic tax credits. So a lot of the cash doesn't start coming until the later years, and so IRR is ROI, but it's over a period of time. And so you have to, with a real estate fund, you really have to educate investors on that. So for instance, our brother Chris Senegal, he bought an asset class that was already cash flowing in Houston. So you can get an ROI on that because there's already cash flow, and he improved that cash flow. We're building from scratch. Right. There's nothing there. So there's no return in your first, second, third, and maybe even fourth year. But as we get into the fifth, sixth, and seventh year, which is what we made our investors' expectations, you're going to see all of that, what looked like absence, you're going to see it manifest in the later years.
That's important, man. And when I hear you say that, in a lot of ways, it's not even just about the ROI. It's just the idea that you are intelligently building your community. And so sometimes that ROI is not just the money.
Correct.
Because you would wonder, like, why would somebody do that? Why would I give somebody money that's going to take me 5 years to manifest or to give me that return back when I could go invest in something that's cash flowing?
Yeah.
What's your stance on that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, if I wanted to be, but because I told you my default identity is child of God, I could be a cutthroat real estate investor, and it's all about money.
Right.
And we know some of those personalities online who are just like, yeah, just go in there, buy it up, and displace the people and raise the rent and get your return. We know who those people are. We don't have to name any names, and that's just not how I choose to grow real estate. Our approach is not to displace anybody if we don't have to from the communities that are there. That's called colonization. And so, there's a distinction between gentrification and colonization. Gentrification is actually the upliftment of a community. And so if there's an entire block of black homeowners and they all decide to paint the facades of their buildings and put gardens out in front, then they've all increased their equity, and they were all black. So they gentrified their own block.
You can gentrify your own block.
Exactly. Man. And there's the greenest block in Brooklyn as a demonstration of that. And I used to walk down that block when I would take my daughter to daycare. But colonization is when outsiders intentionally come in and try to displace the natives from that neighborhood.
So we're calling it the wrong thing.
We've been calling it the wrong thing the entire time because colonization has so much of a negative tinge due to racism in this country here.
But sometimes you got to call it what it is.
You got to call it exactly what it is. Not sometimes. You got to call it what it is all the time. And so that's what's been happening in our communities. So we are here to actually improve the community as a whole, and we have to get creative. So for instance, there is a auto mechanic that is on the corner of one of the lots, and we own pretty much a lot of the block. And so we're working with him to try to find him a place to move his business, right? And actually leave him with a better property than what he currently has right now, so that we can develop that entire block. Right. We're not just like, oh, we're just going to buy you out. We're going to squeeze you out. No, that's not how we operate.
So you say you're finding him a better property. You finding him a better property within something that you guys own, or is this a whole new? And I like, and see, this is the thing that I think is dope, because when you work with yourself and you work with people who look like you and who you own, you actually benefit by helping him, because now you're going to have a built-in tenant. So it's like I'm not sure if that's a strategy, but just hypothetically speaking, where they come in, they're like, nah, we don't want you here, get out. You come in, you're like, okay, we want you to stay here, but we just need this property for this. But let me put you here, and you don't have to go search for a tenant. You don't have to go find somebody who's loyal, who's going to pay, or whatever that looks like, even if it's not a tenant situation, it might be an ownership situation. And so, like, I think that's another reason why we have to continue more of this and more of it's not about the money all the time. Yeah. The money is just a tool to get the freedom and the equality and the equity that we want. It's not about the cash all the time.
Exactly.
And so like that's why what you guys are doing, people might look at it from the outside because all they see is money, like, oh, well, it's not cash flow, it's not doing this, but it's doing a bigger work. It's doing a greater thing than just getting that quick buck to go buy some sneakers.
Yeah, 100%. And you have to attract the right investors for that, who understand that long-term game and want that social return on investment. Yeah, but for this case, we're proposing that we found him a better property that we actually developed. Right. Because right now the property that he's in is falling apart. Right. So we're actually going to give him a trade, basically a better property, so that we can actually command that entire corner there in that block, because we think that that's going to enhance the ecosystem.
Why wouldn't he do that? It sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Just old and stuck in his ways. That's all. And then we've had we own another block off of Government Street, and there was literally just one house left, and we had to let the tenant know he hadn't been paying rent for a long time to some investor that was in Florida, and so we finally bought the property, and we had to let him know that we had to release him, and his family thanked us. Because he was literally going to stay in that home until the roof fell in on him. The distant investor did not put anything back into the property. This property is literally falling apart, and his family thanked us for causing him to move.
Yeah. Wow. You spoke at InvestFest, and that was cool to see you on the big stage. I've seen you on different stages. I haven't seen you on like the big stage. What was that like?
Oh man, it was a blessing, and thank you to Matthew Garland who who has always been not only a fan but a brother of mine, and then also to Rashad and Troy for bringing me on the EYL podcast eventually thereafter. It felt good because I knew I had been doing great work in the community, but I don't do it for any external praise or whatnot. But for me, it wasn't a checklist item. It was to just get the message out to more people.
Right.
And any way that I can do that, I'm happy to do that. And so it was a beautiful platform, and it led to more people getting involved in the movement. It led to a strategic partnership with myself and EYL through Matthew Garland when we did the 4-3-2-1 strategy program, and we've been able to get more people to close through that process. Matt had already closed about 100 of my students, so he was providing the financing.
That's dope.
Yeah, so the partnership was already there organically. It was just our opportunity to formalize it, and so it was a beautiful thing, and that was the opportunity to kind of make ourselves known to the public that this is what we're committed to together.
Matt's in New York. Are most of your students in New York?
No, I have huge amounts of students in New York, Atlanta, in Texas, and California. So in some of the bigger states.
Right. So like the expensive places.
The expensive places. And that's why the need is so strong, because they know that if they continue to rent for the rest of their life, they're literally going to be giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars. Literally, people are missing commas and zeros to the left of the decimal point in their bank account because of one reason: their housing expense.
Yeah.
And so that's where they're having the greatest financial stress. And if we can literally just do one thing, I'm not asking people to pick the right NFT, the right cryptocurrency, the right stock. If we could literally just get rid of your housing expense for the rest of your life.
Change your life.
It will change your life. Just that one thing. And so that's my focus. And I know there's all these new opportunities to invest in here. My focus and where I'm locked in on is helping people get rid of the biggest expense in their life, bigger than taxes, which is their housing expense. If you can go from paying expensive rent in Brooklyn to now being paid expensive rent in Brooklyn, that one thing alone will change the financial trajectory in not only your life, but every generation that is to come after you.
Wow. Speaking on that, finding multifamily property in those expensive states can be tough because the values are so high. Multifamily is talked about a lot now. Like, it's kind of been just pushed. Like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
How are you able to find opportunities in those expensive areas that still make sense?
Yeah. So we have an abundance mindset. And, I teach that through Rich and Righteous, the book. I focus with my students. I don't just focus on the tactical how-tos of physical real estate. A lot of that is on blogs, podcasts, all that. It's out there. You can go YouTube, everything, all the steps. Mm-hmm. What I focus on in my program, the multifamily movement, is the mental real estate. Right. And that's what blocks people. 40 million people have bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but 40 million people have not bought real estate. So they have the information. The information has been there, but in terms of acting on it, right? Yeah. They haven't acted on it. The truth alone will not set you free. Only acting on the truth will set you free, right? And so once I realized that, especially as an online educator, I realized that my mastermind had to be more focused on the structure and the accountability to make sure that people implement the information. Real estate is not brand new. The same thing that I'm teaching doesn't evolve that much, right? But the reason I've been able to get so many people to the finish line is because of the structure and the accountability and the community that we provide. And that's hard to replicate. Yeah. And I saw this, and this is really important because if we're not careful in the online education space, we're going to end up like University of Phoenix, where all we care about is how many people are enrolled in our programs, but we don't care about how many people actually get to the finish line, to the actual result. I care about the result. I just crossed 200,000 followers on Instagram. On the same day, I crossed 300 closings. What number do I care about most?
Closings.
That's all I care about. Everything else is just vanity metrics for me. All I care about is how many students I've helped get to the finish line, which is the closing table.
Man, that's deep. So, I mean, going back to the real estate, because I'm really trying to understand this.
Back to the question, sorry.
Because a lot of these properties in these expensive states don't cash flow or they don't make sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what you say is you got to look off the MLS. And so are you saying that, because, I mean, if you look at a deal and you underwrite a deal and it comes through a broker, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. They squeeze all the profit out of the deal.
Correct.
We're walking away from those.
Correct.
So you're just going direct to the seller and finding a deal that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And you're coaching them through that process. We don't even look at MLS anymore. Because I know that's what you said. What was something about Zillow?
Yeah, Zillow and Trulia, that's where multifamily real estate deals go to die.
Right.
Because if you look at the research, they charge a 30. Once it's on those websites, the real estate has a 30% premium. Why would I want to pay a 30% premium on a $900,000 property? Right. So this is where off-market deals are so critical, and this is why you have to build your real estate Rolodex. Right. How do you get the hookup at Foot Locker? You know somebody there. It is a relationship. And the same thing applies in real estate. You have to know people. And so your real estate Rolodex includes not just one real estate agent, but multiple real estate agents.
But if you're going through a real estate agent, that's not the same as Zillow?
No, because real estate agents, they get pocket deals. Before they ever list it on Zillow, if they know a buyer, they can actually approach the buyer. And if they know you, they'll approach you before they actually list it. They want to sell that as quickly as possible so that they can get their commission. And if I don't have to go through the process of staging and putting up photos and all this other stuff and showings, and I already know a buyer, and you've proven yourself that you have the financing ready and you take action, then I'm just going to get this deal done quick for my buyer and my seller. I'm going to serve as dual agent.
I always thought that it was either like wholesale and going direct to the seller, cold calling, email list, that kind of stuff, or going to a realtor, going through Zillow. But it seems like, or just going through Zillow, because I'm like equating Zillow with realtor.
Gotcha.
But you're saying that's not the case.
No, before it gets listed on Zillow, the Zillow is the last place that a realtor will actually go to list. They'll rather go to great realtors. So a novice realtor who just got their license the other day, they get a client who wants to sell, they'll go list it because that's all they know how to do. They haven't built their own real estate Rolodex. Yep. But a great real estate agent, somebody like Rashana Scott, right? They're going to have investors in their back pocket, right, and they'll present that deal to those investors before she decides to go list it publicly. Yeah. So this is, you want to be at the top of that list when that deal comes through, right? And so in these markets, going back to your original question, thank you for bringing me back. I've had students close in Brooklyn, 2 students close in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn, New York in the past month. Yeah. And people keep saying, oh, it's not possible in my market, this and that. No. 1, the abundance mindset. That's what I answered first. Within 2, knowing how to run the numbers. And then 3, the 1% rule may not apply in these markets. So in certain markets, like
1% rule is?
The 1% rule is that rents have to be at least 1% of price. So if you're buying a $500,000 property, then the total rents have to be at least $5,000 per month for this deal to make sense and for me to do a deeper dive into it. So the 1% rule applies anywhere else except for some markets in California, obviously many markets in the Northeast, some markets in Texas like Houston, and then places like Miami. So in those places where I have students, we're not trying to get the 1% rule. So we might not be buying a multifamily that gets us to full rent and mortgage freedom. We're just looking for a multifamily that will allow us to be paying less out of pocket for housing than when we're renting. So if you were renting at $3,000 a month and you found a multifamily real estate deal that's actually going to bring your housing expense down to $1,500 a month, that's $1,500 in cash flow. Yeah. While you are also now building equity, right? Appreciation, your principal is being paid down, and then all the tax benefits of controlling that particular asset. Yeah. So on a multifamily real estate deal, typically we're comparing that deal based on cash return. But this particular asset class has these 3 other financial benefits that most people don't know how to calculate or account for, which is the tax savings, the appreciation, and the principal pay down. So when you actually add those things in, every single multifamily real estate deal should actually be a 25% return. If I can find a return that's 25% every single year,
it's no brainer.
All my money is going there for the rest of my life. If you understand the power of compounding interest, that means that your money, based on the rule of 72, your money is doubling almost every 3 years. Yeah. But most people don't know how to account for these other benefits, so they only focus on cash return, which should be about half the amount. So bare minimum in these other markets, we want cash to be at least 12%. Right? 12% means rule of 72 divided by 12, your money is doubling every 6 years at a 12% cash return. But cash return is only one of the 4. So there's cash return, there's the tax benefits or savings from controlling this property and the deductions that you get. There's the appreciation, which is anywhere from 1 to 3%. Actually 3% on average, but of course these past few years have been ridiculous in terms of appreciation. And then there's the principal pay down, meaning that your debt is being reduced, and when your debt is reduced or your liability is reduced, your net worth is going up. So those are the 4 financial benefits of multifamily real estate. And so since most people don't know how to calculate the other 3, they just focus on cash return.
Yeah. So for the people who they maybe feel like they can't afford a single family home. And so they think that since they can't afford a single family home, they definitely can't afford a multifamily property because it's like four times the value. How are you helping those people get into that space? Because I mean, you're like closing the gap with multifamily.
Yeah.
You're closing the people who can't afford to buy that expensive house and also don't want to rent or probably can't afford to rent.
Yeah.
That gap. And I know there's a lot of people who most people are in that situation.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you tell that person who might be struggling with a job, in and out of the job, credit might be the best? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, we have to dispel that myth.
Which myth?
The myth that a multifamily actually is a fourplex costs 4 times more than a single family. In Oakland, I've seen single families with the same square footage cost more than a multifamily. Why? Because the demand for single families and people's idea of the American dream is higher than people's awareness of multifamily.
So it's market specific. I know Detroit's like that too.
Yeah. So so a fourplex does not mean 4 times the cost. What's crazy that people don't understand, it's actually easier to buy a multifamily home than it is to buy a single family home. Mm-hmm. It's actually easier. And the reason why is because the lender will give you credit for 75% of the rents that you are going to get.
Mm-hmm. How do you, I know people say that a lot, but how strong is that? Are they looking at the condition of the units? Are they looking at the tenants and their leases and how long they've been there? Or are you just like,
it's going to come from their appraisal?
Yeah.
It's going to come from their appraisal. Their appraiser will actually verify the rents that these units should be getting, and then you'll get 75% credit from that particular amount. So if you, especially if the building is vacant, the appraiser will look at market rate rents and will use technologies like Rentometer or something like that. And then if there's actual leases, they may use that as well. Yeah. So that's where you get the data from, but it comes from the appraisal. It's not a number that's just made up or that you come up with. Right. It's from the appraisal. So they'll take 75% of that and add that to your W-2 income. So if you have a fourplex that is producing $4,000 a month in rents, right? 75% of that is $3,000 times 12 months is $36,000. So now you've taken somebody who had a $40,000 W-2 income, you add it on. Now you're adding on 36, right? And so now they're being qualified based on $76,000 of income, right? As opposed to 40. And typically a lender will give you credit for about 6 times what your income is. So if your W-2 income is $40,000, you could probably get approved for something around $240. But now over here with this multifamily, your income is showing at 76 because of the rental income. So that's $456,000. So this is why it's actually easier to buy a multifamily than it is to buy a single family. On top of that, it's easier to keep a multifamily than it is a single family.
Why?
Because if you have a multifamily, right, and you have a mortgage for 30 years, something happens to you over 30 years. You get divorced, you lose your job, you have a physical disability, mental illness, you lose your income potential. Who's been paying the mortgage the entire time?
Tenants.
Your other tenants. Even if you are not working, okay? If you have a single family home, and something happens to you over the course of 30 years, who's there to help you pay the mortgage?
Nobody.
Nobody. And so it's actually easier to keep a multifamily than it is a single family home. So this is why, especially in these high cost markets, and this is why my student base is high in these high cost markets, people are coming to the awareness that if they don't figure out how to get their housing expense off the books, they will end up paying rent for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And it's not going down anytime soon either. The rent just keeps going up. And what's interesting about buying in those high value, high demand areas is, you have tenants. Like the tenants there's people who want to live there. There's people who are willing to pay the rent. And so you're not out there searching for people who want to live. And I know people might be concerned about that because I saw somebody recently, he was like, man, I didn't think anybody was going to rent my property, but I posted it. And I got 100 leads, people who want to rent my property. And so I think sometimes there's that maybe fear of the unknown because a lot of us don't have parents who are landlords. A lot of us don't have parents who have had successful landlording experience. Yeah. So you're stepping into that and you're like, man, I don't know if it's going to work out for me. But again, abundance.
Yeah, abundance. And then also you have to know that you as an investor, especially an early stage investor where you're willing to sacrifice it all. I drove a 2000 Honda Accord till 2017, right? And so for me, I would never rent a 1 bedroom in New York for $3,000. But that's me as the investor who's seeking to build wealth. There are plenty of people in New York who do not have that mindset, who will happily happily rent a $3,000 one bedroom in New York. Yeah. Why? I don't know. But if you're willing to do that, then I'm happy to rent this space that I own to you.
Yeah. What was your landlord experience like during COVID?
Yeah.
You got 40 units, man. That's 40 tenants. 100%. How was that?
So I've diversified my portfolio, and over half my tenants are Section 8.
So government kept paying.
Whether the economy is up or down, whether COVID lasted 1 year or 10 years, it's guaranteed. And my Section 8 tenants, they cover about 95% of all my mortgage payments. So even if none of my market rate tenants decided to pay whatsoever, my mortgage was still covered.
Yeah.
Right. And so for my market rate tenants, I had 3 who chose to downsize. I had nobody try to live off of me for free, even though the laws and the CDC were allowing people to. I had nobody try to do that because I've been taking good care of my tenants the entire time. So I had 3 people to downsize in terms of like move back home, things of that nature. And I was able to fill those spaces back up. And so I'm actually grateful that I was folks' landlord during that time, because I don't hate much stuff in life. The one thing I do hate is slumlords. And so I'm glad that these tenants were under my stewardship as opposed to somebody who didn't care. Because I know that as a slumlord, probably during COVID, if they're not getting rent and things of that nature, they're not fixing anything. You say you got a rodent problem, you got a roof a leak. They're not coming to fix anything because they're putting profit over people, right? I put people over profit, and that's what I teach my students. We are ethical investors, right? We're doing this for the human beings. The property is secondary. We're doing this for the human beings that we take care of. And I house about 70 people that I consider family that I take care of. Wow. Right now, I do have a property manager at this level who serves as a not a barrier between me, but who takes care of all the day-to-day things. But I care about the people who I house.
Yeah. Would you say that now is a good time to be in multifamily?
It's never not a good time to be in multifamily because at the end of the day, especially people are thinking about a recession or whatnot, multifamily is the most recession-proof asset class that there is. And the reason why is because when people get foreclosed on, so interest rates go up, right? People over the past 2 years bought all these properties at high prices because interest rates were down, right? But when interest rates go up, what they don't realize is that the demand for their property is actually going to go down. So now they bought this $700,000 property with their 3% interest rate, but now the interest rate is at 5%. So that means that the market can afford less. And so the demand for a property at $700,000 is not there. So they're actually going to be underwater. They don't.
I've been trying to tell people that for so long. They don't listen to me.
Maybe they'll listen to me. I don't know. It's like a jelly jar. You know, I pass it to you and you pop it off, even though I tried for an hour.
But a lot of people, they're getting the information from like people who are trying to sell them the home.
100%.
Right. So
the real estate agents. And this is why you can't just work with any real estate agent. The real estate agent will sell you whatever you desire and want. The one that does not care about you and the generational wealth, and all they care about is their commission, right? So that $700,000 property that you got at a 3% interest rate, when the interest rates are now 5%, that property is actually only worth $600,000. So you're now underwater. So you actually cannot sell. You cannot leave. You're stuck. And at $700,000, 1% rule, nobody's paying $7,000 a month rent for your space. So you're now stuck because you bought a property that was valued too high, right? And so it's a dangerous time for single family buyers. While they may think that, oh, I got this low interest rate and I'm in this house I love, if you ever need to exit, you're going to have a very hard time doing so without taking a huge L. And so with multifamily real estate, when those people get foreclosed on, right, because they need to move to California or over here, but they can't sell their home, when they get foreclosed on, guess what they have to do? Everybody who gets foreclosed on, they still got to live somewhere. So what do they have to do?
Buy another home or rent somewhere.
They can't. They got foreclosed on. They ain't buying another home. They have to go rent. So the demand for rentals goes up in the midst of a recession. So that actually strengthens the value of multifamily in a down economic time.
Right.
And so for me, it's always good to buy multifamily, whether you're getting a great deal and you're able to get cash flow from it while living for free, whether it's beating what you're paying in rent or whether the economy is down and you're just breaking even. It's just the best asset class to hold. It's been here longer than any other asset class. Like, I can't guarantee you that Tesla or Amazon will be here 100 years from now. But as long as there are human beings on the face of this earth, and guess what? They're going to need a place to live. Yeah. So this is why I trust in this asset class. Yeah.
Speaking of the recession, a lot of people are forecasting a recession for like 2023, I think. That's what I've seen. What do you think about that?
They can have a recession. I'm not choosing to have one.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So groupthink and collective consciousness, we can co-create whatever experience that we desire. And so if the news decides to project that we're going to have a recession, then guess what we're going to have? We're going to have a recession. Yeah. Same thing with fashion. Fashion, right? They'll drop the color like teal or purple. They'll drop it 9 months before it actually becomes the color. So it's just planting a seed in the collective consciousness. So if we continue to hear that, then you're going to hear, oh yeah, I hear there's going to be a recession. Yeah, I hear there's going to be a recession. And then you start making decisions based on this contraction. Yeah. And therefore, recession is really just the moment that currency stops flowing. And people start hoarding instead of allowing currency to flow. If we choose to reject that narrative and continue to allow currency to flow, then guess what? There'll be no recession. So I don't choose to buy into that narrative. For me, there's always deals to be found. There's always economic opportunity. We know that many Fortune 500 companies were built during the Great Depression. So I don't have, whether it's up or down, I always see opportunity. My lens says opportunity on it. It doesn't have a designer brand on it. It says opportunity. I always see opportunity, whether something is down or up, there's opportunity.
That's a bar. I think we already had a recession. I think that the COVID situation was a recession. For some people did experience, like, I was at the barbershop. He was like, man, we were shut down. I never want to get stuck like that again. Yeah. And it reminded me of the people who were making comments like that during the housing crisis. Like, I never want to get stuck like that again, or any of those times. But I think you're right. It's like you have to see the opportunity. And a lot of people who are winning now is because they approach COVID differently.
100%.
They didn't approach COVID in a way like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to sit around and do nothing. It's like, bro, like, we sitting at home. Let's do something. Let's run it up. Let's whatever that looks like. So I think it's kind of dope to have that perspective. In terms of the groupthink, and this is a controversial question to ask people, but do you think that kind of happened with the COVID, where people kind of like, that was like the thing that was being planted and then the media is promoting and all that stuff? Because I know it was a serious situation, but I don't know if it was as big as it was kind of talked about.
10 years from now, we're going to look at COVID as just another strand of the flu.
You know what's funny is when you say it like that, that's kind of like Y2K. I remember Y2K was a big deal. We were stocking up on water. We were doing crazy stuff. And then you look back, it's like, we was really out there wilding over that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Now, what people are going to, why whoever the powers that be who have the influence, why they might initiate something like that, I still don't understand and know what that narrative is, but it was magnified through the media and through our collective fear. Our collective fear. The people who are warriors are the squeakiest wheels, and that fear got magnified and obviously led our country to shut down in many different ways. Many of the other parts of the world didn't have the same experience of COVID as we did. Why?
That's true. Even the different states were different.
Yeah. So I think 10 years from now, it'll be just seen as a new strand of the flu, and that we overreacted.
Yeah. Wow. The book. Let's talk about your book. For those who don't know, can you kind of give an explanation of that? And also, I'm kind of curious, because we did a whole episode talking about the book, but I want to know, like, what's the feedback been since then, and what kind of testimonies you've been getting since then? Like, what does that look like?
100%. So, man, that book, when I read it still, and I can't believe that I wrote it, that it came through me. Like, I was just showing up at the computer at 3 a.m. whenever spirit was moving me, and my fingers would go. And I was like, I wrote this? Like, it's just so crazy. The book, we've sold over 10,000 copies independently.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
man.
dope.
10,000 copies. You know, we had a $100 price point, and you get 5 for 100. And the reason I did that is because the book's not meant to be read alone.
Yeah.
You know the power of mastermind groups whenever 2 or more are gathered. And so you actually receive 5 so that it immediately puts you in a state of giving right away to stimulate your personal economy. You now have 4 books to give to other people to stimulate your personal economy. So the book is essentially, you know, a lot of people who listen to your show, I'm sure they've read many of these books. The book is like the Bible, Rich Dad Poor Dad, As a Man Thinketh, and Think and Grow Rich, all in one. It's all in one. And in terms of the feedback, people are just saying that it's elevating them from poverty consciousness to wealth consciousness, and that they see money and they relate to money, and not only money but God differently. And that's the ultimate message of the book. Once you start to see money as stored energy, once you see it as energy, and you see it as an inert spiritual substance that you get to use to create more good or do more God on this earth, it changes everything. You have a different relationship to it. You don't work for it; it works for you. And it's really about how you use it, and that we, as good stewards of this economic resource or this stored energy, we aren't supposed to spend it, because when you spend money, you end money, right? You're actually supposed to circulate it, and when you circulate something, circulation means that it always comes back to you. And so again, a recession or depression only occurs when people stop circulating money. Period. Mm-hmm. And the reason we hoard is because we have fear that it won't come back. But we are responsible for circulating this energy towards ideals, ideas, individuals, institutions, and investments that we believe in. So I know you invest in Tesla. You don't invest in Tesla just to make money. You invest in Tesla because what they're doing in terms of getting us off of fossil fuels is a very important thing for the future of our experience here on Earth. Right? So you are giving energy to that institution without actually being at the boardroom table every single day or working in it. Right? There are employees who are giving their energy, their time energy to it. You're giving it through economics, right? So once we start to see money in that way, then we can get in the habit of enjoying circulating it and having fun doing so, and not being afraid to release it, knowing that it will return when we invest it in things that that actually bear good fruit. And so that's been the greatest awareness. A woman just messaged me. She said she was at dinner with her friend, and the moment they enjoyed the meal, right? But the moment that the bill came, they were starting to complain about how high the bill was. And they were literally robbing themselves of the amazing experience that they just had by now complaining about how expensive the bill was. And so she caught herself in that moment and said, I've been reading this book. And we have to think about, one, we enjoyed this meal. We were able to pay the waiter, we were able to pay the sous chefs, the chef, the restaurateur. We were able to pay the truckers who got the food here, all the way back to wherever each ingredient in this meal was grown. Everybody got paid. We just circulated money, and we should celebrate that. And we had an amazing experience doing so. By now trying to uproot all the good that we just experienced, we're actually sending a contradictory or incongruent energy to the universe that I love this experience, but I also hated it because I feel like I lost money. And so this incongruent thinking that we have about money is actually what blocks us. And some of it, not some of it, a lot of it comes from our spiritual upbringing, thinking that money is the root of all evil. This idea of I hate rich people, right? You can't hate rich people and want money at the same time. You can't hate rich people and desire to be rich at the same time. Those are two incongruent thoughts. Because what you're saying is that once you become rich, what are you going to do? You're going to be the one exception, or you're going to hate yourself too. And at what level, what is that number for rich? And so you're actually repelling money from coming to you because you have this holdup that all rich people are bad. And so I believe that as children of God, I want more people who would, because when I ask people, would you do more good with more money? They all say yes. So guess what? Then I want you to have more money, because I know that you would do more good with it. Right now, people who are not doing or being the best stewards of it and using it for selfish reasons, they have more money in this particular economic environment that we're in. So what's blocking righteousness from entering into our experience is that we've had this negative understanding of money and what it is and how it's meant to be used and its purpose and our relationship to it. And once we change that narrative, then we'll be more comfortable having abundance of money, right? And being able to use it. Now, it's actually not having money. That's not the goal, right? It's not about accumulating money. It's about circulating money. So for me,
how can you be rich if you don't have an accumulation of money, if you're just circulating it?
Great question. So, when a rental car company leases a car out, it's still theirs.
Right.
The asset is still theirs, and it's working on their behalf. If you never send your dead presidents out to work, right, then you're allowing them to be lazy. They actually are more productive and create more wealth for you when you let them leave. right? So when I get a dollar bill, I say, in God I trust, and I release it. And then when it comes back to me, I say, in God I trusted. Me hoarding money does not actually multiply it. And this is the parable of the talents. One person was given 4 talents, multiplied it to 8. The other was given 2, multiplied it to 2. They had to release it in order to multiply it. The one that got scolded was the one who buried it. Burying it is the same as saving money in a bank account, where you're only earning 0.03% interest in your Bank of America savings account. You are burying money. You are storing energy. And what most people call financial security, having a whole wad of money in a bank account, is actually financial insecurity. Because what you're saying is that I do not know how to grow this money at a greater rate than 0.03%. So I'm just going to leave it here. Now, here's how I know you know how to grow it at a greater rate than that. Because if I told you, do you know how to turn $100 into $101 over 365 days? Could you turn $100 into $101, meaning you only earned $1 over 365 days? Could you do that?
I can do it.
That's a 1% interest rate. That's 1% growth. That's greater than your savings account. So it's actually financial insecurity when you're hoarding money, because you are afraid that you don't know how to grow it and don't know how to multiply it. And so one of the most powerful things is learning how to release money and do it in such a way where it comes back to you. So especially for those who are entrepreneurs, there's 2 key ingredients that we must have as entrepreneurs. And that is, 1, our blessing model, which is how we give to the world. But then there's our business model, which is how we receive. You got to have both. Can
you break that down?
Yeah. So
because on the surface level, it's definitely dope, but I want to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I went to business school, and I learned all kinds of different business models in there, and there's tons of business models out there. What we've had difficulty doing, those who are doing good in the world, we think that everything that is good, and it has to be a nonprofit.
We do. That's definitely true. They get mad at you for trying to charge some money.
Yeah. If you're doing good, I need you to learn how to make it profitable so that it can expand without relying on somebody else's money in order for it to grow. And we've seen this happen. Like some of the college institutions out there, they're nonprofit institutions, but they found a business model that allowed them to continue to expand.
Right.
So we know that it's possible. We just get lazy and say, oh, no, I'm just doing good. I'm just going to ask people to donate to me. No, if your work is really good and needs to reach more people, you have to figure out how to make it profitable so that you can expand it through your own system, not by relying on donations from people who are not part of the entity itself. And so
why is that important? Because
it has to be self-sustaining.
Why is that important?
For something to be self-sustaining?
Right. Because I still feel like as a culture, sometimes we adopt that on the whole.
Yeah.
Like it's not even just like in business. Like we are looking for our come ups and our advances to come through charity or come through somebody doing something good for us, just out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah. So going back, children of God, looking at how God operates and how God creates, everything that God creates is self-sustaining. In man and woman, we have seed and womb. In a piece of fruit, you have the seed that's in it. Everything in nature is self-sustaining.
So they had to kind of teach you to be dependent upon them.
100%. When George Soros decides that, oh, I don't like black people anymore, so I'm going to not write this check as big, now your nonprofit is struggling and can't serve in the way that you decided that you wanted to serve.
Or even if it is funded, you still are controlled by the funder.
100%. In their vision, in their mission, not what you truly set out to do. You started to have mission creep. You had mission creep. You had an initial mission when you started, but you started creeping to fit the funder's guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually got away from the real work that you were intending to do. And so we have to figure out how to make that sustainable. One of my favorite examples is there was this, I don't remember the name now, but when I was in LA, there was a nonprofit that taught kids entrepreneurship, and I think they actually made their own salad dressing and was distributing that through the grocery stores in Los Angeles. So that's an example of them saying, we're not going to rely solely on outsiders. We're going to have a business model that allows us to continue this work. Yeah. And this work actually supports that. So your business, your blessing model is just how you want to give to the world. It's you expressing your purpose to the world. I want to educate people financially. I want to help people buy real estate. I want to help young girls dance, whatever it is, right? And then your business model is how you receive. Are you receiving that through one-on-one training? Are you receiving that through an online course? Are you receiving that through a book? Are you receiving that through public speaking? Are you receiving that through a product that you created? You have to create the receiving model. And once you pair those two together, then you end up being able to scale your impact as wide as you want it to be. And you and I, we've talked, and we've both been able to experience that. We had this knowledge that was within us, and we were able to put it out in the world. So our purpose is now profitable. Yeah. And so now our purpose gets to expand and reach and touch more people.
Man, I love it. That's what I was trying to pull out. I was trying to pull that deep stuff out of you, man, and we did. Come on, man. I appreciate you for coming on, man. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they support you got going on?
Yeah, so the primary place is Instagram, and it's Jullien, Jullien, Gordon, Gordon. There are a lot of fake accounts out there. You might see 2 Ds in the last name, etc. So, and I don't have a blue check yet. I don't know what that is.
You got 200,000 followers. Get him a blue check.
Yeah, come on.
What's going on?
But I don't even know if that will stop the fake accounts. So just be mindful. And then if you want to learn about how to buy multifamily real estate, you can go to rentfree.com. Rentfree.com. I have a webinar that I do there periodically where I'll teach you the game. And then for those who are interested in elevating from poverty consciousness to wealth consciousness and want to get a copy of Rich and Righteous, they can go to moneyandmanifestation.com.
Dope. Well, another powerful episode. I appreciate you for coming out.
Appreciate you.
And yeah, make sure you guys check out all that information. We're going to have that in the show notes for you. Also have the information for all our products and courses in the show notes. And it's going to continue to bring you guys more powerful guests, get you these gems and this information that's going to help you edify your life. And, man, I know you guys' mind was blown away with this one. So make sure you listen to it twice. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, signing off.